It was much quicker and bloodier than first announced, but Conservatives have a new leader and Britain now has a new Prime Minister. Theresa May, the last woman standing, the 59-year-old Home Affairs Minister, a moderately Eurosceptic Conservative, but who voted Remain and who's pledged to respect the will of the people and lead the UK out of the European Union. What kind of a deal will May negotiate? Why did no Tory candidate who carried the banner of Leave emerge as the replacement to David Cameron? David Cameron, who will serve out the remainder of his term as Member of Parliament for Witney. We'll delve into the dynamics of British politics and see if the same group that brought us Brexit can heal the divisions, both domestically and with neighbours on the continent. Today in the France-24 debate, we're looking at Theresa May's moment. With us from London, Adrian Pabst, who teaches at the University of Kent. And we're also pleased to welcome here to our studios Alexis Poulain, director of Euractiv, European news website.
Yes, we're in 12 languages in the UK, France, Germany, and we cover European affairs, and we had a lot to do with Brexit these days.
All right, and from the Welsh capital, Patrick Mimford of Economists for Brexit and who teaches at Cardiff Business School. Thank you for being with us. The France-24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. She comes to office at a time that would have challenged a Churchill, writes The Guardian in its lead editorial. Adrian Pabst, do you agree with those words?
Actually, because these are unprecedented times where the country is deeply divided. It's very unclear what can be done about Brexit. And of course, there are also global threats, economic threats, as well as threats to the security of Britain and other Western countries coming from ISIS. So, yes, these are times where you need very strong leadership, a safe pair of hands, and I think Theresa May can provide this.
What did you think of the tone of the new Prime Minister?
Well, so far we've really only heard two interventions. One was her Birmingham speech in which she launched her campaign. This is before she discovered that Andrea Leadsom, her challenger for the leadership of the Conservative Party, had actually pulled out. And then we heard a brief statement after she had met her Conservative colleagues and actually been confirmed as the next leader. So we haven't heard an awful lot. I think so far the tone has been very much one of unity, party unity as well as national unity, and a very clear sense that she wants to tackle the deep structural problems that led many people to vote for Brexit. Inequality, lack of jobs, social problems, cultural divisions. And if she manages to do that, she could be one of the great prime ministers that Britain will have had.
Alexis Poulain, her first speech there after seeing the Queen outside of number 10 Downing Street, she artfully avoids the word Brexit.
Yeah, of course. I mean, she also avoided the campaign. She is there because she was so quiet during the campaign that she was sort of Tory figure that could actually come in being Eurosceptic, but also being pro and anti-Brexit at the same time. So in what sense she did campaign to remain remains a question.
Patrick Minford, she won't be able to sit the fence, will she, when she names her cabinet?
No, she won't. And of course, the big problem that I don't think either Adrian or Alexis have really picked up is that if she doesn't satisfy the Brexit requirement, which is that we get control of our borders and we get control of our laws, she will be in very deep trouble. And she knows that because she said Brexit means Brexit. So that's her problem, really. How does she do that? And there really is only one way to do it, which is to leave the single market and to leave the EU quite clearly and go to some set of policies with respect to trade that don't require European Union cooperation, because we know that the European Union is going to insist, if there's any sort of deal with them, that there be free migration from Europe, because that's the single market, and that we subscribe to the single market regulations, the sort of Norway model. And that is her big dilemma, really, because I think that it would be easy for her to just go the Norway route if she could get away with it.
Just explain to our
politically.
viewers, the Norway route means that the United Kingdom still trades with the EU, still has free movement of people, and even contributes to the EU budget.
Exactly, and is subject to all the single market regulations fundamentally, with a few exceptions. And so that very easy model, which already exists and I'm sure would please the European Union, and would basically be, well, the status quo with a few bells and whistles. And that really will not satisfy the statement Brexit means Brexit, which means regain control of borders and regain control of laws and functioning democratic control of laws. And so that is her fundamental, what she has to meet. And there is only one way to do what the people have demanded, at least what I would interpret, and I think most people would interpret the people as having demanded, which is, control of borders and control of laws, except by, as I say, leaving the single market, going to free trade, and essentially joining the world economy as opposed to the EU, single market, and selling into the single market from outside.
All right, let me bring in Adrian Pabst on this. Do you agree that anything short of completely cutting the cord with the rest of the EU will be tantamount to trying to fudge it?
No, I don't, because, when anyone says Brexit means Brexit, the question, of course, is what means Brexit? And yes, I think that Patrick has a point when he says that it is about control of borders and about control over national laws. But of course, the fact is that you can sometimes best control your borders by actually cooperating very closely. And as the Home Secretary, Theresa May, has repeatedly said, that intelligence sharing and all sorts of cooperation with France and other EU partners has been absolutely crucial in keeping Britain safe from terrorism. So control of borders obviously involves a lot more than simply immigration. Now, there is the Norway model, which Patrick rightly mentions, but of course there's another one, which is Switzerland. And Switzerland does not have complete free movement at all. In fact, is going to curtail the relative freedom of movement that actually exists at the moment. And it's also very clear that no one is going to say Britain has to follow an existing model. It'll be a new one. I suspect it'll be neither Norway nor Switzerland, but nor will it be a free trading relationship, because that would mean two things. Replacing all sorts of EU legislation very quickly, which would take up enormous parliamentary and administrative time. And secondly, it also creates huge uncertainty while you pull out. No one can really afford that, not the EU member states, not Britain. Therefore, there will be some kind of new model, some kind of new deal between Britain and the rest of the EU.
Alexis Poulain, if you're a betting man, what do you think Theresa May is going to negotiate?
Well, it's going to be a tough job.
Which option? Because we've heard several options
well,
here.
All the options,
the Norway option, the Switzerland option.
I mean, if she was, she would go on the Norway option, I think, which is the quickest and
EU
safest.
light, in other words.
Yes, exactly, which is the easiest. But because what happens now is that I think the EU partners will be tougher around the negotiation table. So whatever she comes with, it won't be easy to get. You see, I mean, nobody wanted
this
the job.
statement she made outside of number 10, she said, I will lead a one-nation government. Is there a way to have a one-nation government? Is there any formula where she can have that?
Well, it would be opening the government to the Labour Party as well if she was a one-nation government. That means that she would have to open it to people of the other side and say we're a nation there because we were in the Remain camp or whatever, or even having the Brexit people and listening to everyone. I think she said that, and a lot of her speech was about keeping the United Kingdom united. It was not about the EU, was in the second plan, but the first, thought she had was we have the Scots, we have the Irish, we have the Welsh, and we have to live together.
She said we're the unionist party. We believe in the union.
Yeah.
Not only between nations of the UK, but also between the people.
So imagine the state of the UK right now. It's all about healing and putting people together.
All right. Is the UK in danger? The United Kingdom in danger? Adrian Pabst?
Of course it is, because we know that Scotland voted overwhelmingly in favour of remaining in the EU, and so did Northern Ireland. And there are all sorts of questions about the breakup that could be a side effect of simply pulling out of the EU. So I think if Theresa May is true to her word of being a one-nation Prime Minister, then she will want to do everything she can to keep Scotland and Northern Ireland on board. And that means, of course, changing the relationship between the various nations within the UK, maybe greater decentralisation, finding a way to devolve power also to English cities and English regions, because there's a huge deficit there. But of course, it also means taking on board what Northern Ireland and Scotland have to say about links with the EU. So she's not simply going to pull the EU out, Britain out of the EU in 6 months or in 2 years. I simply don't think that's going to happen. She's far too pragmatic for that.
All right, Britain's second ever female prime minister, but you can put aside comparisons with Margaret Thatcher. For what lies ahead, those comparisons will be with an entirely different customer.
Der neuen Premierministerin, die ja sicherlich sehr bald
The new British
ins
Prime Minister,
Amt
who will soon be in office, needs to clarify what kind of a relationship Britain wants to build with the European Union.
in Zukunft zur Europäischen Union aufbauen, dann auch einen Antrag nach
They then have to send an application to the European Council to start exit talks based on Article 50.
Verhandlungen zu beginnen.
Patrick Minford, earlier on France 24, the French socialist senator Hélène Conway-Mouret, former minister for the French abroad, said she wants to see the clock started before the end of the year. There has to be clarity for the sake of all those EU citizens who work in Britain and all those British people who work on the continent.
Yes, well, that's true. But of course, first of all, there has to be a decision about what model Britain is going for. And that's the discussion we've been having. I think, both Alexis and Adrian are kidding themselves about what will go down okay with the British people. We shall see. In my opinion, the only model that will work will be if we pull out and then, from that position of having pulled out, negotiate a free trade agreement on specific industries that there is a joint interest between the EU and the UK in keeping together. For example, the classic example is the car industry, which is highly integrated across Europe. And I believe that if we go down the logical route of becoming unilaterally free trading, then what will come out of that will be a desire by the car industry in Germany, for example, to have a relationship that prevents them from competing in a globally open market in the UK, where prices would be much, much lower than what they are now. And so I think out of that will come a kind of, I kind of agree with Alexis and Adrian, a special kind of free trade agreement tailored to the UK, which would be designed by the various parties to keep relations friendly on those specific industries that are critically related, and that will allow, nevertheless, a completely clear line on immigration. I don't agree with Adrian about, terrorism being enough and cooperation on terrorism. That is, I'm afraid, missing the point. What the British public voted for was a cessation of unskilled immigration from all over Eastern Europe in vast numbers. That is costing, a lot in welfare, and that welfare cost is being effectively paid by local communities that are really quite poor. And that was really a big element. The other element, of course, was democracy. And the whole problem about both the Swiss and the Norwegian option is you don't have any control over these regulations. You basically sucked into this European regulatory system, which is basically hated in Britain and is very intrusive.
But what's Patrick Minford? Go ahead, Adrian.
Yeah, can I just respond, because there's a number of things there that really need to be challenged. Well, let's start with the point about immigration. Of course, immigration was a huge driving factor, and it is a huge concern. But let's not forget, it's not just a concern in Britain, it's a concern in other member states too. So if the EU were to offer something on freedom of movement that wasn't just applicable to Britain but to the rest of the Union, who knows? So I'll just put that out there for debate. But the more important point is, it's not the case at all that Eastern Europeans or anyone else from the European Union has been claiming vast amounts of benefits. That is simply not the case. The big problem of immigration has been undercutting wages, pressure on public services, including housing and schools and so on. It's not actually a welfare issue. It's an issue to do with jobs
That is
and
welfare.
to do with pressure
That
on
is
public
welfare,
services.
Adrian. You're kidding yourself.
No,
That
but that's not a welfare
that is
bill.
The cost of
No,
welfare.
but that's not a welfare
it is
bill.
welfare,
That's simply
my
not.
dear
That's simply
chap.
not.
Of course it is. You're being an idiot.
Well,
it is welfare.
can,
it is the
okay.
spending on health
You
and
can,
education and housing, which is costing the citizens of Britain, and that's what they object to.
Yes,
that's
okay.
exactly you put your
Absolutely,
finger
but
on
you-
exactly what they object to.
Adrian Pabst.
Yes, I agree. But the point is, other countries have also had quite long exemptions from freedom of movement. Let's not forget that after Eastern enlargement, Germany had a 7-year transition control, and other countries did too. The British government at the time chose not to use that. That was simply a huge mistake, which would have avoided this influx of Eastern European workers.
That is
so
history.
let's also
That
not
is
forget
history.
that Eastern. Yeah, I know, but the point is it shows that there are exceptions to freedom of movement. Freedom of movement of people is not absolute in the EU, just like freedom
I'm
of movement of
afraid
capital
I
is not
completely
absolute.
agree, but it has been made
And
clear.
let me also make
Mrs.
the point
Merkel.
about legislation. The House, I'm sure Patrick will accept the House of Commons Library, which is an independent body within the British Parliament, that actually says that only 13% of legislation can be traced directly to Brussels. So the idea that somehow 75%, which is what many Brexiteers claimed, 75% of British laws were coming from Brussels, is simply one of those lies, frankly, that was peddled during the referendum debate. So it's simply not the case that there's this huge regulatory straitjacket. It's nonsense.
Patrick Minford, after years of austerity and not enough spending, some say, on things like infrastructure, with no EU to blame, is it going to be tough whoever governs?
Oh, it's always tough governing Britain, which is part of the reason why we want control, because we can throw them out if they don't do a
So
good job.
there will be much more money for the NHS and this sort of thing. We've
Where
heard
the money
people
will
roll
come
back
from?
those promises already.
Well, Adrian is in denial, you know, like many Remainers. He thinks that you can sort of rewrite the referendum. But of course, once you've had a vote like this, history changes. And I think you'll find that it's not so easy to kid the British people that they've, you know, with any fudge. We will see. We don't know. But when it comes to governing on the point of austerity you're raising, austerity, it depends what you define as austerity, but there is a need to control debt and to bring the deficit down. You can't avoid it. One has to have solvency, and so that will carry on.
That will carry
And
on.
of
I'm going
course-
to have to interrupt you, Patrick, because we have to take a very quick break. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.